Our guests are Hina Shamsi with the American Civil Liberties Union, where she serves as National Security Project Director. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And we're also joined by Cliff May, President of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thanks to you as well.
Thank you.
We wanted to have you both here to talk about enemy combatants, what they are, why that definition is significant. We saw the White House yesterday announce that they do not plan to treat the Boston Marathon bombing suspect as an enemy combatant. Let's just take a step back and talk about what that term even means.
Well, the roots of that term come from the Bush administration, which sought to create a category of people that it thought violated the laws of war.
Combatant mean to you, Cliff May?
It means that you're not imposing a criminal justice framework on what was seen by the perpetrators as an act of war. That's how they saw it very much. You're not equating them with tax cheats or shoplifters or somebody who holds up a 7-Eleven. What would happen in Boston was an act of terrorism, was an act of war, so you're calling a spade a spade. Our priority here should be, I think, not to punish these perpetrators, not to prosecute them, not to rehabilitate them. Our main purpose right now should be we have somebody in custody who may know of other terrorist plots, of other terrorist cells, who has information that may save lives and prevent future bombings.
Here are some headlines for the Washington Post. Officials say the Boston bombing suspects apparently motivated by religion, no terrorist group ties seen. And then CNN, a source says the Boston suspect says his brother masterminded the attack and that they worked independently. They weren't part of a larger international effort. Does that change your opinion?
No, because don't we want to get this from the horse's mouth? How do we know? Do you know? Can you tell me? Can these articles tell me who financed them? Can you tell me who trained them? Who taught them how to make a bomb? Who inspired them? Who radicalized them? All of these, who else they were in touch with in this country?
With ACLU, what's your response?
There's so much there based on speculation and not based on fact at all. We have no idea right now about what the motive is. All of that information is going to develop. And
not if they don't speak. It would be very difficult for anyone to learn to make a bomb like this simply over the internet with no training. The use of the pressure cooker, the use of ball bearings and nails in order to make essentially many, many tiny knives that would slice through people's limbs, the detonator, all that takes some training. So the supposition, the working hypothesis, it has to be they didn't do this on their own. Somebody trained them. We don't know who this is. We do want investigators to find out. Investigators could find out more easily if they were able to ask the question and have the question possibly answered. That may not be possible now that the suspect has been told he has the right to remain silent. If you were to name Tsarnaev an enemy combatant, that does not necessarily mean he goes to Gitmo. It does not necessarily mean he gets a military tribunal. You can name him an enemy combatant for purposes of interrogation, and then after the interrogation is completed, you can transfer him back to the criminal justice system. All that happens is that the information you've gotten from him during the time that he's an enemy combatant would not be admissible in a court of law. You don't use it for that. You don't use it for criminal prosecution. You use it for intelligence. You use it to prevent future acts of terrorism and to unravel any terrorism that may be ongoing and to learn more about the terrorist groups that are in this country and elsewhere plotting against us. So I got to tell you, it's a red herring to say, well, I don't want him to have a military tribunal. It doesn't have to. The question is, and by the way, there can be other...
No one's saying that.
What's that?
No one's saying that.
Well, but right away, and I've heard, it's not just you, I've heard plenty of people saying, oh, this is all about getting him to Gitmo and getting him to a military tribunal.
No one's seriously saying that.
The priority should be to get information from him. Now, there may be other ways to do it. Which I don't think, and I don't think you and I are not sure whether the administration attempted to do even for a short term. The public safety exception allows you to delay the morning.
Let's get to the public safety exception in just a moment.
But here's the point I've got to make.
Briefly.
But it's really the most important point. What this is about is, most importantly, is whether we get the information, life-saving information that Tsarnaev probably has, or whether we say we just don't need to know.
Okay, we'll get one moment, please. We'll get to the public safety exception in just a little bit, but I do want to get your impression. Is it possible to have a temporary use of the military combatant term, get the information needed, and then re-enter the criminal justice system?
No, it's not. Our Supreme Court has said that you cannot hold people militarily solely for the purposes of interrogation. This is a legal factual and policy non-starter. It was a mistake made by the Bush administration and not accepted by people who don't recognize how far astray the Bush administration went when it sought to place civilians in military custody, denied them their legal rights, and led to a process that we now regret and recognize was wrong. And what we can't do is somehow say this is so different that we're going to overturn our Constitution, we're going to risk jeopardizing a prosecution, and we're going to violate values that we hold strongly and dear. We went down that path and we came to regret it. We're doing the right thing now. Let's go forward.
Again, our working hypothesis must be that these are terrorists. And the difference between a serial killer and a terrorist is that a terrorist has a political motivation. If you look, for example, on the YouTube page of one of the suspects, you see links to various jihadist videos. They call themselves jihadist videos. In fact, one of them is with the flags of Khorasan. It talks about an army coming out of Central Asia, according to an ancient Islamic prophecy, and non-Arabs, it says, and these guys were non-Arabs, these were Chechens, they're from the Caucasus, they're Caucasians, quite literally. This non-Arab army would have better riders and better weapons, and they would have this penultimate battle against the infidels, followed by another battle that would be the ultimate battle against the infidels in the Levant, with the area that is now Lebanon and Israel and Syria. This is the kind of thing he was watching, and we can assume this is the kind of thing that inspired him, and we can assume, yes, that this was an act of terrorism, not an act of a couple of deranged kids or serial murders for no reason at all. If you don't think this is terrorism, I think you're willfully self-deluding.
Hina Shamsi.
So the suspect has been charged with crimes of terrorism, and we'll look to see how that goes forward, going forward not on working hypotheses based on supposition, but actual information that law enforcement finds. The viewpoint that they have, that they've tried to push for the last few years, is the idea that we are in a global war, that we're not just in a war in Afghanistan, but in a war in the backyards of Boston. And there's simply no legal basis to believe that, nor is there a factual basis to believe that. And what we must do here is avoid the kinds of hypotheses and speculation that would lead us down a path that we have already gone down in the past and that we can and must reject as improper and ineffective and unnecessary. The federal government has done the right thing.
Listen, I am absolutely for constitutional protections, but I think it was Justice Robert Jackson who first said the Constitution is not a suicide pact, and to choose not to know is wrong.
Response: is it a risk worth taking?
The risk, sorry.
If there is a global war, if there is a war that's been brought domestically to our shores, is it a risk worth taking?
There is no global war, and we don't let individuals who make grandiose claims against us decide that for us. There is no global jihadist movement. There have been many people who've made grandiose claims about wanting to be in a war. How that ends up getting decided is based on facts on the ground. It ends up being based on law and facts, not on the suppositions or on the grandiose claims of people who would like to be bigger than they are.
And there's a tweet relating to what you're saying. Jim writes in and asks, can an American citizen be considered an enemy combatant?
Absolutely. It goes back to the Civil War. You can have, and it goes certainly to World War II. Anwar al-Awlaki was American-born. President Obama used a drone to kill him in the wilds of Yemen. If you affiliate yourself with enemy forces and you go to war against American citizens and you kill Americans willfully, and you do so on behalf of a movement or an enemy forces, then indeed you can be considered an enemy. You're not immune to being an enemy combatant simply because you're an American citizen. If in World War II you went over and joined the Nazi forces, were you not an enemy combatant? Of course you were.
Okay, Hina Shamsi.
It is true that U.S. citizens can take up arms against the United States, and then they become what's called under the laws of war and lawful belligerents, right?
Anwar al-Awlaki was an American citizen. He was killed on the orders of President Obama. Did President Obama commit a crime by doing that? Did he violate the Constitution by doing that?
Well, actually, we have a lawsuit in which we are seeking to get answers from the administration about what legal standards they used and invoked when they killed Anwar al-Awlaki, as well as his 16-year-old son, a boy born in Denver, Colorado, who has never been accused of any wrongdoing whatsoever.
The use of drones against Anwar al-Awlaki, and I still wanted to know if you think that was, your supposition is that the president committed a crime by doing that.
I'm not going to speculate more about what happened here, what didn't happen here, whether it was proper or improper.
Why is it important for you to hear whether the ACLU believes it was a crime or not a crime by the president?
Well, I think it tells us a lot about what the ACLU thinks of the various methods being used, not just by the Bush administration, of which I know you're critical. We've heard that, but also of the Obama administration, which has used some pretty tough tools to fight terrorism. And in this case, and certainly drones are among them. And I think it's good to be kind of frank and honest and say if this is another method of fighting terrorism that you would not allow the government to use.
The federal government has done the exact right thing. The military has its role in particular areas, and law enforcement, the FBI, other intelligence agencies have their role in other areas. And trying to combine the two and confuse the two is one of the things that was a terrible mistake under the Bush administration. It is a good thing that the Obama administration is not making that mistake in this context now.